just recorded a video of me making this melody. Here's what it sounds like. And then it gets a little bit different in this section, but yeah. Let's start adding drums. I think I want it to be like a rage-like beat or trappy or something like that. So let's find some sounds. Ooh, I'm not going to make the same mistake this time. I did this in the last video I made. I didn't realize that my 808s were panned all the way to one side until like way later. These are all, I think, panned to the left right now. Let's change that so that they're in the middle. There we go. Ooh, I guess while I'm doing this, I could also start to kind of arrange the melody. So I don't know. And then maybe we can like make this come in at the very end here, just kind of as like a little, like, hey, I still exist type deal. This clap, I liked the texture, but it was a little bit too bright for my liking, so I boosted some of these like low mids on it. And then I'm kind of shaving off some of these some of this high end a little bit. And I did something similar over here. I didn't want to do too much on one because I didn't like the way it was making it sound, so I put it in two different ones. But you could probably get a similar effect with just one EQ. And then I think I want to get like really slow, but like interesting with the hi-hats, if that makes sense. Something that like follows the bounce, but then like adds little flavor, you know, notes here and there. So like something like. So sometimes I do this and it works, sometimes it doesn't work. I will make a hi-hat pattern for the first like 2 bars, like this. I'll copy it over to the second bar, the second 2 bars, but then in the second 2 bars I'll flip it. So I'll just highlight all these, hit Control Y, or I'm sorry, Alt Y, and it will bring up the flipper or whatever, and you can flip it horizontally, and sometimes it gives it a cool bounce. Okay, let's find the Blessings Crash. Okay, I think I want an open hat. I like this one. And then maybe we take the ones that are like right before the downbeats and just turn them down, like turn the velocity down a bit. So it's not quite as like in your face. Like move them up. And then just take these main ones and pan them left to right. I took all my melodies, I did this at the beginning before I even started this particular video, but routed them all to the same mixer channel so that I could affect them, you know, as a group. And then I have all my drum sounds, excluding my 808, going to the same thing. So I've got my kick, my claps and snares, and then all of my hats and crashes, and then all of those are going to this drum bus, which just has some EQ, a wave shaper just to push things a little bit louder. Sometimes I use Maximus for something similar, but this time I didn't want to. A compressor and a limiter just to make sure things, are as loud as I want them to be. And then I'm running all of these drum sounds into, well, essentially it's parallel compression. So it's sending the same signal to two different things. So on the first one, it's over compression. So what I'm doing is taking the signal that's being sent to it and like super compressing it, like way too much. As you can see, I've got zero attack, a little bit of release, a 6:1 ratio, which is pretty high. And then I'm cutting the threshold way down and then pushing the gain way up. And if we look at what just this looks like, it's super squashed, Like if we compare this to what it looked like originally, here, I'll detach this so that we can see. Okay, so on the left is like the normal signal, and then on the right is the over-compressed signal. And you can see like we are way over-compressing over here, which is why everything is like so squashed and down and fat and wide and all that stuff. But the purpose of over-compressing some of this signal is if we take the original signal and we send it to two different places, and in one of them we over-compress it, and then in the other one we don't. We just leave the signal alone, and then we blend the two together. And the way that I blended it was the over-compressed signal that's being sent to, like the mixture signal, with both the original signal and the over-compressed signal, it's being mixed out by 30%, which means that only 30% of this over-compressed sound is coming through. So you have the original sound, which is how I have it normally, going to this. And then I have this overcompressed sound that's also going to it, but only a little bit of that overcompressed sound. And you can push this more if you want to, or less, depending on what you want. And then they're coming together into this, combination, and it sounds like this. And it looks like this. And if we mute the overcompressed signal, which again is only coming through 30%, we can hear a little bit of a difference. And see a difference. So if I turn on this overcompressed signal coming through, it's a little bit louder, a little bit beefier. And you can see I'm like pushing up into the limiter a little bit, and then if you turn this off, I'm not pushing into the limiter at all now. See? All of a sudden we're hitting the limiter. And the reason for that is because we're adding that little bit of over-compressed sound. And one thing I noticed with parallel compression is when you do parallel compression, sometimes your high end can get way too loud and way too bright. So what I do when I do this is I generally leave, sometimes I'll, EQ a little bit, but I generally leave the tops and bottoms alone, depending on the sounds, obviously, and then the beat, right? But I generally leave stuff alone, and then I come over to the overcompressed signal, and I take out all of the high end. So you can see I'm taking out a lot of the high end before I compress it, and then I'm compressing it down with a compressor and a limiter, and then I'm using another EQ to kind of do the same thing and take off a little bit more of that high end. Because if I don't do this, let's hear what everything sounds like if I don't take off some of this high end. You might like the way that sounds, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm not a fan of like how bright everything is. Because the way that I mixed it initially, it was as bright as I kind of wanted it. So I tend to take some of the high end off of the overcompressed signal just to keep things from getting too bright. But it's still punchy because I'm not taking out that low end. So that's kind of for taste, really. But yeah, that's some of the stuff that I did off camera. I routed everything to different channels and then took all the drums, put them together. And there are more things I could do to this as far as mixing and mastering is concerned, but for the purposes of this video, I think that's about it. So let's listen to it from the top.